journey beyond imposter syndrome. This is where I invite you into a space where high achievers and spiritual leaders converge to redefine success and self-worth. By sharing transformative stories and engaging with thought leaders, this podcast serves as a roadmap for navigating the complexities of imposter syndrome. It's an intimate look into overcoming personal barriers tailored for those who value wisdom, leadership, and intuition in business and life. Join me at the Humble Warrior Podcast with Alani Bankhead. Welcome to the Humble Warrior Podcast. I'm your host, Alani Bankhead, and today is a very special episode. We have the Humble Psychologist Warrior with us. Dr. Siera is a seasoned mental health professional with almost 20 years of experience providing clinical care to diverse populations, including adults, children, and adolescents. She holds a bachelor's of science in psychology and political science from St. Peter's College, a master's in clinical counseling psychology, and a PhD in international psychology with a trauma services concentration. Her international work is extensive, having served survivors of sexual violence by developing and supporting psychosocial programs in Guatemala, El Salvador, Bolivia, the Dominican Republic, and the Middle East. Her global expertise is complemented by her commitment to providing culturally competent services to underserved populations. She's licensed as a professional counselor in Washington, D.C., Maryland, Virginia, Texas, and Florida. And she's also the co-founder of the Latina Healing Institute, a healing space created for and led by Latina women. Anna, welcome. This has been a long time coming. Thank you so much for being here. Please, in your words, tell the audience about yourself. Who are you?
Thank you for having me here. Definitely, it's an amazing platform to share like stories. And well, I am originally from Honduras. I was born and raised there, and I arrived to the United States when I was 14. So I came here as an immigrant, just kind of the immigrant story, learning English, doing everything, adapting to the culture, everything. Our family came here to really have a better life because Honduras was unsafe at that moment, in the 80s and 90s, and now still. But yeah, so I was privileged enough to have the opportunity to be here and to take those opportunities. So I guess in the core, like with my family, we always had this idea of you're grateful for these opportunities and you take advantage of everything. So that's why I decided to become a professional and make sure that it pays off all of those sacrifices, with my family. So when I decided what I wanted to study, I realized that I wanted to make a change in life and in society really. So I first got into political science in college. And I remember that my political science professor, Dr. Sanders, he's still at St. Peter's. He encouraged me to apply to the White House internship. And I'm like, yeah, right. They're going to get me there. But I got it. I got in and I got to experience the field of politics here in DC back during my college experience. And I realized that's not the way I wanted to make change because I think I saw parts of that being to not didn't vibe with my personality. I remember our professors would tell us you have to learn to like lie to people in a way that you won't be able to, they don't realize that you're lying to them. Do favors for people and manipulate, and it just didn't vibe with me. And I don't know if it was just those professors or it was just the entire world of politics, but I decided I have to find something else. So I bumped into psychology and I thought, well, it would be amazing to do this experience one person at a time, and it makes a difference to others. And I got my bachelor's in that. Then, as every immigrant, I guess, that gets to finish college, I thought that was it for me. So I went straight to work. 2006, I started working in the field. And I think that at that point, I wasn't really as aware of the amount of human suffering out there because I've been so sheltered and with my family, with my parents, my little bubble of privilege that I got to experience college here and everything. But I didn't know really, I think it was a hard awakening the first few years in this field to realize how much kids being abused, people being abused, mental health issues, just how much that was, it's like a plague that we can't see in society, which makes all these societal problems that we have. And I also saw that Latinos, I remember working for a clinic. It was a group therapy clinic, and I was doing group therapy for everybody. And I saw that the Latino clients would always hang out in a corner by themselves because they didn't have a provider that spoke Spanish to do groups for them. So I started this cafecito group for them. And I remember the agency was like, but why are you excluding everybody else, from the cafecito group because I did it in Spanish? And I asked them, well, why are you not including them in everything else you do here? Because they're not included anywhere else. So I thought this would be just a space for them. And then they kind of let me have my group. And I would bring coffee and snacks for them. It was so fun to see them recovering. These are people with chronic mental health, so schizophrenia, I know, very severe mood disorders, and they're very good, very nice people, very good people. So then I realized, wait a minute, am I right here? Like, I'm the only Latina in this agency. All of the Latino clients would be neglected if I wasn't here. But then I realized that was a pattern throughout all mental health services, really all health services, educational services, and how much we needed to have people kind of move and represent in these places that are healing for, that they have a right to heal as well. So then I went to get my master's in Latino mental health, well, clinical counseling psychology with a concentration in Latino mental health. Back in the days, there was only two programs, one in Chicago and one in Massachusetts. So I decided to stay in Chicago because Boston is too cold and too racist. Chicago was nicer. So I got that experience, and then I decided, well, that's it. I guess after the master's, that's it for me. There's no more. I can't do anything else. That's like the top of what I thought I could achieve because that's what I was being fed through in many, I would say implicit and explicit ways throughout my academic career that you're just lucky to be in this level, kind of like you wouldn't be able to do more than that. And in your 20s, you kind of listen to people's stories and people's opinions and people's advice or people's perceptions of you. So I did fall into that. I didn't go for a doctorate right away because I thought that's too hard. Who's gonna have time like I'm not gonna be able to make it. I still thought that my English wasn't good enough in my 20s. So yeah, then I don't know, things happen. I worked for some years with my master's, got my license, and then I'm like, wait a minute, let me explore it. And it just kind of bumped into the opportunity to apply and to do it. And then I finished, and I'm like, oh, that wasn't so bad. I mean, it's hard, but it's not impossible to do. And I think in my 30s and 40s as a professional now, I'm like, the more that we stop listening to other people and then we just decide what we want to be and what we want to create and what we want to do, the more that reality becomes true. So we stop worrying about what people think you should be doing, you should not be doing. In our culture, like the whole pressure of you need to get married and pregnant was back and forth with pressure that took me to therapy in my 20s because I was in a relationship and I didn't want to get married. And then the culture is like, your eggs are gonna dry up, you're almost 30, what's wrong with you? And I remember feeling a lot of pressure. But thankfully, as a therapist, I went to therapy. I worked on that and I realized, you know what? There's nothing wrong with creating what I want to create. And also maybe showing other people that they can do that too. And there's no fear. What's just a fear about not complying with the things people want to see you do or not do. So that's what I would say puts me where I am now, and then creating spaces for other women like me, or other women of color, Latinas, who We both engaged in that project that because it is so needed through the spectrum of Latinas, all colors, all, language abilities, all ethnic backgrounds from Latin America. I think I'm at my peak and I love it.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I would say you're actually just getting started. And for the listener, Dr. Siera is being very humble. So I'm going to toot your horn for a second. Okay. So I actually met Anna. She glossed over this whole part of her career where she did
Oh
anti-trafficking
yeah. Oh
work.
my God. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's true.
So we met, gosh, it's been almost 10 years since we worked together, and we were at an international nonprofit, a pretty big one that does anti-slavery work. And Anna was the director of aftercare services for all of Latin America, and I was the director of investigations for all of Latin America. So we both worked on this team serving a number of countries in South America. So my team were the investigators that would partner with law enforcement. We would support with the operations, and we would do the recovery of any child survivors of trafficking. Anna's amazing team did all the aftercare, victim services, healing work. And so in a nutshell, all the work that we did, one of the things that I have always admired about you is that there are not that many people that think at a higher level in terms of A, not being competitive, and B, understanding that collaboration is actually the vehicle that results in better outcomes for everybody, right? So, um, Dr. Sierra was such an amazing person to work with because I think we both inherently knew, even though we never talked about it, but we both knew that the investigation could be a powerful avenue for healing for the survivor. And
Mhm,
I knew that we needed the aftercare team to
mhm,
support successful prosecutorial outcomes, because if we had a survivor who was willing to participate in, the justice process because they were healed enough, right? Or they were far enough along that they wanted to be a participant, that was a massive win for us, which to the audience, I know this sounds like common sense, but common sense is not common.
It's
So
not. It's not. Oh my God. Even in people who are educated, it's not,
it
you
is
know.
so not. Yeah. And so back then we were midway through our careers compared to where we are now. And we understood enough about each of our problem sets that we were pretty dangerous. But obviously now we have almost 10 years more experience of diagnosing and analyzing and all that stuff. And Anna was really the first person I ever encountered on the victim services aftercare side that understood that like there was a bigger picture that we were all working on. And it was, to me, it was really refreshing to get to partner with you because, again, common sense isn't common. And I was like banging my head up against a wall for years with whether it was a prosecutor or a judge or a victim services person, where I'm like, how do you not understand that like this is not separate missions? Like we
Yeah.
work together. We have slightly different missions, but if the goal is ultimately to support the human being and our community, then we should
Mhm.
all be working towards that together, right? And so, on another level, so I arrived to that job with a lot of my own insecurities and doubts about not necessarily my technical capabilities, but if I belonged, because um, Anna talked about a spectrum of Latinas, and she shared about her immigrant past. And for me, I was born and raised in the United States to Latino parents, but I felt like I didn't belong either in America nor in Latino spaces. So Anna really helped me subconsciously start to reclaim my own identity as a Latina and define that for myself. So now we are co-owners in the Latina Healing Institute venture. And that has been such a fun, powerful project. And so I do, we've talked a little bit about like some of the incredible, amazing work. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, you guys, on what she's been doing. You're definitely going to want to follow her on socials, and we'll put those links in the show notes as well. But I do want to go back to what you said, Anna, about so you had this first instance of a professor encouraging you to apply for this White House internship, and your words were, yeah, right, and then you're like, but then I got it.
Yeah.
Can we talk about what your process look like? Because there were obviously these invisible hurdles kind of put in front of you, whether it was given to you and you subconsciously kind of absorbed it, or maybe you had the hurdle that you put there yourself, but you have a consistent pattern of like there's a hurdle and then somehow you figure out a way to go around it, over it, under it, through it, like whatever it might be. So what did that self-doubt process look like for you when you were younger?
Well, I think that you, as an immigrant, you don't really feel like at that point, I also was still a resident, so I wasn't a citizen. I was in the process of that. So I didn't feel like I still felt like a visitor to this country. And we didn't know, and my family always wanted to go back to Honduras at some point, but I don't think I saw it the same way. I saw it more because of the mixed messages I got through high school and even like a college professor that completely dismissed, me when I went to ask her for some help. Um, I remember that one of the first things I was interested in back then, my first year of college, is I wanted to go to medical school. And I'm like, but is that too big of a dream? And then I went to this professor. She actually still there in school and asked her about it because she's the only person that I thought was a resource. And then she told me, I really don't have time for you right now. So maybe you should like just Google MD programs. And I'm like, "Ugh." And she was Latina too. And it broke my heart. So I'm thinking, if a Latina doesn't think I can do this, how am I going to get into the White House? That's weird to think that. But also in high school, I had been told by a white counselor that I couldn't make it in college because of my English. She actually gave me advice and told me that I should have a white boyfriend so that I could be motivated to learn English better. So these messages, I know, right? Yeah. But then when I was in the White House, I realized that thousands of kids are told this kind of stuff, this kind of story about them, in high school, in college, everywhere in the academic life. So I think my doubt came from me believing some of that at that point, right? And
Hmm.
if I hadn't believed it, I think it wouldn't have affected me. But I believed a little bit of it. Oh my God, I don't know how to go about this now. How do I go to college if the if the school counselor won't help me? So I think it was just that, and then all of the implicit and explicit hurdles that our immigrant communities like mine, like just being in this country, doubting you because you speak with an accent and things like that. And I know that the experience is different for different Latinas, but I think I doubted that. So when my professor, he's French, I remember he also encouraged me to get into French in college. It was amazing. It's like you have to go and do this, and you have the grades. And I'm like, yeah, but the White House? I mean, I can go to maybe like, I don't know, the transportation department and do some like like, I don't know, sort mail. That's what I thought, at that point. And he goes like, the only way to find out is to do it. So if you let me help you, we'll do it. And then we did and we got it. And he's like, I know you're not gonna believe it, but I'm like, no way. But now you have to get it together and like we have to get you together and we have to get you up there and figure out what you're gonna do. So I'm grateful for the people who were in the path of my academic career that actually saw a different story about who I could be than those who saw me as this immigrant who can't speak, or is not smart enough. Yeah. But
Yes.
it says about more about them. But at that age, you really don't know.
Right. No, for sure. So for the listener who's in college or going to start school or like maybe their entry level, it is normal at that point in your life to have the self-doubt because you're just starting out. You're kind of asking yourself that question of who am I and what am I really capable of and what do I deserve, right? And all this stuff is really happening subconsciously. And the body is wired to prove the negative stuff though, right? So when you have these people that are having these interactions with you that are just really not helpful, it reinforces those negative voices.
Mhm.
But it sounds like a powerful tool for you was almost by chance, right, coming into contact with a community that did see your potential and did
Yeah,
encourage you
yeah,
to with a different narrative about what you were capable of doing.
yeah, yeah,
And
absolutely, yeah.
and so I'm curious, when you got to the White House and you started working there and you looked around, what did you think about what you saw?
It was, it was really, I think it was just, and not to criticize any of whatever was going on back in that year, but it was just a very cold environment, very black and white, very much how do we present things so that we get this out of that? And, or, I mean, I think I had a good experience overall. And I learned a lot that people in those positions, I don't know, I feel like people fight so much to get to a position and to be something and to get something and to be the person, the point of contact of whoever, whatever, or the person who works the most, and maybe that's DC, but there it was even like intensified. I remember going to work at 8 in the morning and coming back home at 7 p.m. every day. And
Hmm.
this is an unpaid internship. So it was you get a stipend for the month for the semester for school tuition. But yeah, I think it was the time where I realized the environment is just so, you know, cold, and there's a lot of inappropriateness with young women and by older politicians, by older people who are in your environment when you go to an event and this and that. You're kind of known as, the younger girls are the interns, and it's really annoying to see that. Now, as a person who works in the field of sex trafficking, sexual abuse, and all of that, how much of that really does happen in that environment? Because
Sure.
maybe maybe that's the only way some people see that they can get to a place because of how cold that environment is.
Mm,
It feels like it was totally created by men, the system.
yeah, yeah. That's a really hard place to be in, especially the type of person that you are. You are very creative. Like you're able to fuse like intuition with intellect really well, right? So Western society, we do tend to be very focused on logic and all that stuff. So I'm curious, you doubted your ability to be capable of working at the White House. So when you got there and you started interacting with people, did you feel like your intellect was on par, or like were you wrong about what you maybe thought you were capable of when you first were told you should apply?
Oh no, I was totally like as good, or if not as the one of the best performers, in the plays. I even got very good compliments from the people who were above me and the directors and everything. So, I even got a job offer, when but I'm like, I gotta go back to college. Like,
Yeah.
I can't just leave my college halfway through. I remember it was an organization that's still here today. And I'm like, huh, what would my life would have been like if I had taken that offer to do it was something kind of like help, kind of like the assistant to a CEO that was in a very amazing, women-owned nonprofit here in DC. So it wasn't something tiny, but when I thought about it, I'm like, I'm pretty good about doing all of these things in English. When I come to this country, I was 20 years old. I turned 21 in DC, and I had only been here in the country for 6 years. Yeah, 7 years, 6 years. Yeah. So
Yeah.
for me, it was like, this is huge. And you have this view of these people in these systems being mega smart, mega like competent, but some of them are not.
Oh, 100%. And that's what I was curious about because
Yeah.
also having worked in DC in government before you and I met, I grew up very much in that military hierarchy of like, if they're a certain position or higher, you don't speak to them because they're very important people, right? And I sort of automatically equated like their position to their intellect.
Hmm.
And so when I started working in those very top federal government spaces and I'm at the White House, I'm on Capitol Hill, doing all the things, and I'm watching them and I'm like, you guys really
We're not
aren't
right.
smarter than anybody else. Like, and I mean, don't get me wrong, there's the top 10% that are the Condoleezza Rices and the Colin Powells that are like brilliant statesmen and very smart, and they're magical and you can feel their presence, like who those people are. And then there's like the bottom, I'd say 20 to 25% that really are only there because they want power and not because they're actually there to serve. And then you have that group in the middle that they're literally just like me and
Yeah.
you. And when you get there, you start to realize the only difference between them and people like us is they know and believe that they deserve those things, and
Yeah.
maybe we're taught that we don't.
Yeah.
So what
Right.
was your journey like to getting from that place of right being blown off and rejected to now owning your own company, which we have to get to that story, but that's a whole massive leap between I'm not good enough to like I'm creating my own career and I'm creating my own success. So like what was that journey like for you?
Yeah, I think I had to go back and reflect about this in therapy when I did my own work and figure out, because I think if you're functioning with the best tools that you have because of that's what your parents and your community and the society has given you access to, you still are missing so much that you could learn about yourself. So I of course I thought I was smart in many ways. I did doubt myself a lot. And I was able to realize that I was trying to prove that I was good enough because it was related to a huge pressure of me trying to make my parents proud rather than me being motivated. I liked school. I do love school, but the primary motivation was to make sure that they were proud, but also that their sacrifice of being, us being separated for 4 years when they came here first and then we came wasn't just wasted. Because I still had that wound of having been separated from them. So I think that's what I'm like. I talked to my parents after about it, when in my healing process. I used to tell them, I was so stressed out. I thought you guys wouldn't even like care about me if I didn't do these things. And they were like, no, don't think that. We would never, all of the things you did it because you wanted to do a master's, you wanted to do a PhD. For us, the fact that you finished college was good enough. And I'm like, oh my God, we've had those talks and gotten close and healed those wounds. And I think that as humans, there's no way to be in this world and not be wounded by something that happens in our lives, because humans around us, our parents, our community, our people are not perfect. So that's why there's no shame in going to therapy and figuring out those things, because those things can block you.
Mm.
I could right now probably be somebody in one of those top offices in DC, but be miserable because my entire motivation to do it was wrong. It was based off of anxiety of wanting
Mm.
to be loved and accepted by my parents and by myself.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, that is so good. So now we're getting to the meat and potatoes. The idea that, we all have this wound, right? And we're not assigning blame, right? Like caregivers and parents are a wide-ranging group of folk, and
They
it
do the
doesn't
best
matter.
they can.
They
Yeah.
do the very best that they can. But you've identified a pattern that I see a lot with the people that I work with, which is achieving is a strategy you learn as a child to receive the love and affirmation that you need as a human being, right? And then when we transition from being children to being adults, it transfers to your job a lot of times. So you were trying to get those good grades or play the sport very well so you could get that love and attention from people, and then you perform at the office. And the highest achievers that I work with, they all have a similar pattern where they do this until they achieve all the things and then they realize
Really.
I'm low key miserable, and they have the option of I can stay on this path of doing what the world tells me success looks like, or I can branch out on my own and create something different, which is really, really scary. And yes, I could fail. And the funny thing is I'm going to give the listeners the answers to the test already. Like I always say, the universe is either going to drag you to your destiny or you can go willingly.
Yeah.
And so it's like this phased approach, right? Where you're operating subconsciously trying to survive, but in that scarcity mentality, you might get into some behaviors that don't work for you. And that's not a bad thing. I think it's part of the learning. But so I'm curious for you, what how did you start that process of disentangling those beliefs? So therapy obviously was a big tool,
Mhm,
but
mhm,
you came to a conclusion at some point of, okay, I'm ready to create my future. What did
mhm.
that whole thing look like?
Scary. Because if you don't have that thing that's made you do what you do, then what the hell do you have? It was scary. Like you don't have any like, footprint. Like where do you go? Like how do you what do I want to do? It's a big question when you have just done what you do because that's what you think you should do. It's not the shoots anymore. It was like, what do I want to do? And if I what I want to do, is it going to be supported in this world? Is it going to flourish? Is it going to be something acceptable, successful, so then you have a whole another set of things to work through.
Yeah, yeah. And that is a lot. So can I share this story about when you came to Hawaii?
Sure.
Okay,
Oh
awesome.
my gosh, yes, yes.
So Anna and another dear friend came out to Hawaii when my husband and I were living there. And so they came out on vacation and oh my gosh, it was the best time. We had so much fun doing all the hiking and all the food things and everything. And, one of the things that I loved the most were these moments of vulnerability that we each had that drove a lot of the connection that we still experience, 10 years later. But so Anna had this moment of taking the leap into her own private practice. And let's fast forward to the end of the story, or maybe the middle of the story, right? Guys, remember I said she's licensed in Virginia, Texas, and Florida, and she does training all over the world. So, like, did it work out? Yes, it 100% worked out, right? But I still remember that moment when you're talking about this dream out loud on our back porch. We're all
And I
drinking
was
wine.
joking. I was joking.
Oh
Like I
my
was
gosh.
talking about it, but in a way like I think I was in my head, I convinced myself that I was kind of putting it out there as a joke, but you guys took it seriously. And I'm like, oh shit, they're serious. What the hell?
It was so good that, well, because it was a no-brainer. And I think that's an interesting point to make of certainly because we're in our heads all the time, we know what we bring to the table and stuff, but often we downplay ourselves because we're comparing ourselves to other people, right? But sometimes it takes another person to come in and say, no, I see your potential and you could absolutely do this, just like your French professor did in the beginning, right? And so, hell yeah, we took it seriously because we're like, the world needs more Dr. Sierra. Like,
I'm
so,
like,
so
oh my God, they're more hyped than maybe, and that reflected on me something. I'm like, maybe it is good. And then you was like, do it.
oh yes, oh yes. You know me, I'm a good strong armor. But no, it was a really beautiful time. I mean, it was a great vacation, but also it's just really fun to be in community and support each other with creating the life and dreams and career that really make you happy and make you thrive. And so I'm curious, like for the listener who maybe is hearing this and thinking, I know what that dream is, but I'm terrified to take the leap. Would you mind sharing just a couple of maybe successes or like what does the joy feel like on the other side of creating your own success?
First of all, I realized how much that doubt was keeping me, really. It wasn't the skill set, it wasn't the idea, it wasn't the need in the world, it wasn't anything else other than me doubting that this will be supported. Like, and I'm like, but who am I asking support for? Like, it just happens. Like, I always knew that this was something that was out there that could be possible. So if you have something, an idea or a dream, there's a reason you have that, there's a reason you are dreaming and you have this contemplate on this idea. and put it out there and think about it a lot and come back to it. And maybe there's an idea that you come back to it a lot. And it's really, believing that you can do it. If you, I tell my teenagers sometimes, you fake it till you make it. That's their phrase, right? But I'm like, as an adult too, like, even if you are doubting yourself, just do it. And you will see that things do work out. And of course, it is always amazing to have support from people, community, from friends, from everybody that it's around you because it's scary to leap in. I mean, I quit my job.
Yeah. And I think that brings up an interesting point too of so fake it till you make it is a great tool. I know I use that myself for a really long time. And you know what's funny is about a year ago, I asked for some feedback from people that used to work for me like 12, 15 years ago. And one of the guys, we were in the Middle East somewhere, and I had written in dry erase marker on the mirror in my room, fake it till you make it. And so he was telling me, he's like, yeah, I never told you this, but right after you got to the unit, we were like some last minute operation had to kick off, and I was going to go back to my room to get some stuff. And so you would ask me to stop by your room to pick some piece of gear up. And he's like, I walked into your room and I was like, in my head, I was like, oh my gosh, he saw the mirror. Like, I didn't even think about it. Right. But this is like almost 15 years later. And he's like, and I saw your mirror. And he was like, we were still sizing you up at that point because you were still pretty new. But he's like, I knew after that you were a good egg, that you were somebody that, we could trust. But it's funny because now looking back on all that season of fake it till you make it, to your point, you know what you're doing technically, right? Even if you're just starting on your journey, trusting your gut and realizing that everything is figure outable. Like you're gonna figure it out. If you care and you want to be of service and be a part of the solution, to me, like I can't teach character, but
Yeah.
I can teach you how to do the work, right? And so I love that, for you, it was this journey of I'm going to act like I know what I'm doing until I know what I'm doing. And then once you're affirmed in that, then you're kind of like, well, what else can I do? And now you've switched from that scarcity mindset to the abundance mindset. And
Oh,
then
yeah.
all of a sudden you have all these opportunities everywhere. And so, Anna, again, I'm going to brag on you for a second because not only is she a multiple business owner, multiple licenses all over the country, travels internationally training all kinds of folks in anti-sex abuse and mental health stuff. She's been featured all over the media, like every major news publication that you can think of, she's done it. But it's interesting because the measure of success isn't really like those achievements. But
Mhm.
I think too, there's an element of like, how do I want to feel at the end of the day, right?
Mhm.
About what I create and the solutions that it brings to the table. And so that's why I love these types of conversations because we're featuring, I don't think you're necessarily just an everyday person, right? But it's so easy to look at like these giants that you see all over the TV and media and be like, I'm never going to be like that. There are amazing humans creating massive solutions for humanity just like Dr. Siera, all over the place. You just have to find these people in your community and connect with them. So I'm curious, Anna, like what's next for you? What are you creating now? What are you most excited about?
I mean, I think the things are working out so that this practice can expand to even more states, as there's a policy that will come up in August that is going to activate in our field the ability to be immediately licensed in many states without the process that it takes to do so. Maryland is one of those states, and that means that if I'm licensed in Maryland, I can be licensed in 13 other states where I'm not licensed in currently. So it can expand all over the US and at least in 13 plus 18 states out of the US. I have a small team, but very, very they work really hard. And I'm hoping to figure out now, I don't know what that's gonna look like, but I know that I trust in my ability to figure things out when they come or as they happen. I think that's one of the most peaceful things that I've had. Like, I don't worry about, oh my God, what if this happens? I'm thinking, you know what? I'm just gonna know what to do when I need to know. And when that happens, whatever needs to happen, happen. Of course, there are things you have to plan for, like insurance, stuff like that, things for business wise. But that's also gonna be figured out at that point. Whenever I need it, I need to get more people to join, have maybe a more stable place where we don't really need a physical space if we're operating virtually like all over, but we have a huge need out there for services for our people, and that's gonna come in slowly. I remember in 2019, I had a no, 2020, 19. I don't remember. I was celebrating my 5 years of being in practice. I think it was 2021 when the pandemic was still there, but I had a reception and I'm like, I know it was the middle of the pandemic. People were already vaccinated, which is great. And then I remember I had all my staff come in and everybody shared a story about clients, but with anonymity. And we celebrated those first 5 years of practice, first 5 years or so. And I remember that in my little speech, and I still have that speech, it's so funny. I'm here saying, I was only licensed in DC at that point and working on my license in Maryland. And I remember that little speech, I was like, and we're going to be serving DC, Virginia, Maryland. We're going to go to this. We're going to New York, New Jersey, Connecticut. I remember I named all of these states. Thankfully, like I trust in God, the universe's ability to put the right people around me, that in that speech, I met two of really amazing, I consider them mentors and friends. They're older, Hector and Jay. They're very, very wise in their knowledge of business. They heard that, and they kind of are guiding me through. That's an amazing dream to be able to function in all these states. And we've been doing business for like more than 50 plus years, 60 years. These are high top business. They did a lot of really high level businesses here in DC, billions of dollars. So these are people talking about my tiny business, giving me advice on this thing that I saw so tiny. He's like, we want you to dream. Yes. Take it step by step because you're going to be successful. Because I wanted to just get licensed everywhere the next day because I was so excited about the dream, the idea. But you need that passion to do so. But you also need people to guide you around. And I just been lucky to find, been blessed to find people around that could like take me down a notch when I try to dream it too big, but still keep the big dream and not kill it, of course. So now that I remember, you're just saying all those dates back to me. I'm like, oh crap, I remember that speech just now.
I remember that speech too. It was a beautiful event. And you actually really, I mean, you inspire me all the time, but you really inspired me that event too. Cause I was like, dang, this girl's celebrating herself. Like, this is amazing. I was like, I want to have a party and celebrate just to, but like, that's definitely something I think that, again, as a high achiever, we're often so focused on the work that has to be done. But the celebrating, it's not just about celebrating or being like, look at me, but it is a community. But there is something very interesting that you mentioned that I want to pivot to real quick, which is, you were like, at that event, there were these two mentors that showed up, and you were like, God, the universe just like brought them to me. And so, one of the things that I find with self-doubt is we often try to work our way out of the situation and we try to control all the
Mhm,
circumstances. And so, a lot of times people burn out or they quit
mhm,
because
mhm.
in business you
Yeah.
can't control everything. Like there are things that are in your control and there are things that aren't. For the person that maybe is in the beginning phase of starting their business and they are tired and they're like, man, this is really hard. I would offer up, there's that saying of like, there's W-2 hard, right? So being somebody else's employee is hard because you're not really doing your mission. You're helping someone else's bottom line or whatever. But then owning your own business and creating your own mission is also hard. And you get to choose your hard, right? So which
Mhm,
hard do you want to do? But I'm curious because we do talk about spirituality on the podcast. And so the way I define it is something that you know to be true, like in your bones, that you don't have evidence to prove exists.
Hmm.
Whether you
Hmm.
call it like God or the universe or Gaia, like I don't really care, right? But there has to be an element, or not, there has to be. I find with successful people, there is an element of like surrender to some bigger picture. And I'm curious for you, what does that look like and how did that play into the success that you've created today?
I think knowing in your bones that you have this purpose and that however that happens, that divine thing will support it. That divine entity will support it. You know that if you keep coming back to this, it's already part of your story, and it's really about what you want to do with that purpose, you know. And yes, definitely spirituality and, you know, connection with God is important to me because, you know, I trust that if I'm one human that can create so much in my tiny world, what that the connection with him and his power is bigger than what I even can think or create. But will like how far will I go is depending how much you trust you have in that. Because, you know, if you don't trust God, then you want to control everything. You want to like, because you can ask my staff, they're funny. They're like, I tell them, you know, I don't, you do what you got to do as long as you get the job done. I don't know. I don't want to know what time you're doing this, what time you do what you got to do. Don't, you know, and they're so independent and yet so committed that I don't have to do any of that. And I'm thinking, and that I learned, of course, you learn that through many skills, but like I don't ever have to worry about things that can happen wrong or anything like that. I trust in people in the ability that they have, but also I have to trust in the power of God to guide it through because if it was in my human way, I would be very controlling. I would be very worried. I would be like not being able to sleep. Oh, no, well, I go through phases, but we're not we're not, you know, able to do. I think that if you put out the product of who what your purpose is, things will flow when they need to. And we have to trust that, you know, be, so whenever we have a passion in this dream and this thing, you get so excited. Like I did in that speech, I thought I was going to take over the world, but in my head, not because I wanted to be powerful and bossy, but because I pictured how exciting it would be to have these services available in many places because it is such a huge need out there,
Oh,
especially knowing, you know, how much suffering there is out there. I get excited about healing rather than the act, you know, how long it will take to get there. So don't not to not be like desperate about getting somewhere quickly, but
right.
and I would say that that's happened in our project too. We get so excited about something and then we modify and we go and we work it step by step. And it's amazing to work that way and be in sync in that way. That, you know,
Yes.
things will work out and things will happen when they have to happen. And we'll, you know, I don't know, maybe I'm too much of like
I
getting.
mean, and I don't think it's too much woo. I mean, I think the point is like you have to figure out what your woo is, right? Because there's something you between the lines touched on, which is it's not just about like an excuse to like put responsibility on something outside of yourself,
Yeah.
but it's about the impact that you have, right? So the idea of having multiple practices throughout the country, it wasn't focused on like, I just want to have all these practices and be able to say these things. It was about the impact you wanted to have to create more healing, right? And on the flip side, we talked about like developing your spiritual practice up front as you're creating, but in our world, you really have to be keenly aware that you are creating ripples in that ether that you're never going to see, right? So in terms of like the anti-trafficking work that we did, a lot of the work we were focused on was prevention, right? So how do you measure stopping a crime from happening? You can't. But I have to believe in something bigger, that because I took these steps to protect this population, that certain crimes didn't happen, therefore they, don't experience this trauma. And oftentimes people do burn out from those spaces because they're not getting that tangible feedback of their work. And so we have to do the spiritual work of reminding folks that no, just because you don't see that impact directly doesn't mean that you're not having it. But I love what you said about having clarity around your purpose was the beginning of it for you. So out of curiosity, because to be a healer is your purpose, it sounds like, right? Unless I'm wrong about that. But how is there a moment that you can remember where you were like, oh, ding, like clarity, this is why I'm here on earth. Would you mind sharing a little bit about that?
All the time. I see that all the time. You know, I was invited to a Mother's Day brunch. I'm not a mom, right? And and then I realized, oh, wow, this is validating to me. I went to the brunch and I'm hearing all these stories of women, right? And we go around the circle and they're talking about how much their mother means to them or their children or things like that. So we talked about that. And, I said to them, I'm not a biological mother, but I have mothered so many children, wounded children, that to me, the joy of that is so big. To know that maybe these children didn't have, moms that were able to protect them, but then that I was able to create space to give them that emotional protection and safety. So I feel like I've always, so I tell them I have all the time when I go on a date or something, I have 12 children. I have 18 children. I have 24 children this week. I have, because to me, that is validating to me. So even in other holidays, I'm like, oh, you're not married, don't have kids. I'm like, I have many kids. I just don't raise them. I'm there for a purpose of time that I need to be there. And then I walk away knowing that they're better because of that small time I'm with them.
Oh my gosh, it's so good. It's so good. And yeah, to your earlier point also, you referenced it a little bit, but there were these breadcrumbs kind of sprinkled throughout your whole life, pointing you to this purpose, right? And that's definitely something that I found as well, whether it's memories or dreams or like, some people have these visualizations of things that, and it all might not make sense at any given point, but at some point you are going to realize the intersection of all of those things is you and your path. And oh, that is just so powerful. I honestly could talk to you for hours, and we will talk for hours.
And we
Uh,
have talked for hours.
I know, I know. And unfortunately, we are out of time, but where can people find you if they want to connect with you business-wise or if they want to seek therapy services from you?
Yeah, so just my website, www.annasierracounseling.com. Or, I'm the same way in Instagram, Facebook, and all of that. You can call the number 571-418-2624. It's on the website as well. If you need to know more about our team and our people, all of our team are amazing. They're all the smiling faces you see on the website. They're amazing people, amazing therapists. So we all speak Spanish, you know.
Mhm.
So come and, find some healing and let us know what you need.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Anna, for being on the podcast. It's really encouraging and inspiring to hear someone's story of all these seemingly different interests, like I said, coming together in one space. And it is a joy to watch you work. It is a joy to watch you evolve and grow and create more healing ripples in the space. And I'm super honored to call you business partner and friend. And for the rest of you folks, if you want clarity around your purpose, check out my life purpose exercise freebie on my website, mightysparrowcoaching.com. There's video prompts to help guide you, or you can check out my best-selling book, The Least of Us: How Your Imposter Syndrome Points to Your Greatest Power. Until next time, humble warriors, please remember the world desperately needs who you are made to be. Thank you for joining us today on this journey to discover how you can harness your self-doubt to work for you. If you enjoyed this episode and would like some help overcoming your imposter syndrome, check out the free life purpose exercise on my website and subscribe to my blog. If you already know what your life purpose is and are ready to crush or harness your imposter syndrome, then you're going to love my best-selling book, The Least of Us: How Your Weakness Points to Your Greatest Power, available on Amazon and all major book retailers. Or you can hit me up at Alani at mightysparrowcoaching.com to discuss private coaching or corporate and government training. That's ALANI at mightysparrowcoaching.com. Listen, there's only ever been one you, and there will only ever be one you. And you have a specific gift to give that the world desperately needs. Don't let your self-doubt be the thing preventing you from living your most joyful and impactful life. Until next time, I'm always cheering you on.